the Pope Counseling webpage. But each of us also takes on special projects. So dual enrollment is kind of the one that I head up and go to the meetings for and disseminate information. So as you start working through this process, you will be working with your individual counselor, but if you have any detailed questions, I may be involved in those. Okay, I have listed up here on the PowerPoint a web page where you can find all of our dual enrollment information. This is where we post, this PowerPoint is posted there. So if you want to follow along with this PowerPoint or have it in your own possession at some point, you can go there now. It is posted there. I will be posting the handouts that you've received. Hopefully you all picked up 2 handouts as you walked in the door, a purple dual enrollment information, I call it my local options and deadlines handout, and then also a checklist for you to follow as you're going through the process of making sure that you have crossed every T and dotted every I in the application process. Hopefully that will be helpful to you as you go through the information. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to start off with a nice little video that the Department of Ed has created for us that basically goes over the process and goes over some details, but then I'm going to go into a lot greater detail and cover a lot of different things related to dual enrollment.
Dual enrollment is designed to allow high school students to attend college classes while receiving both high school and college credit. If you are interested in earning college credit before you graduate from high school, start by asking advice from your counselor. If you're ready to take on college-level classes, you and your parents can sign a student participation agreement. Next, students should apply to the college of their choice, classifying themselves as a dual credit student. On gafutures.org, there is an approved course directory with classes available at TCSG, USG, and eligible private colleges within the state of Georgia. The courses offered by your chosen college must be approved by your high school. When that is done, you will need to fill out the dual enrollment funding application. Public and private high school students should file this application online. Home study students should complete the paper version. There are 3 parts to the application. You and your parents will fill out Part 1. Your high school counselor fills out Part 2. The college you apply to will fill out Part 3. The completed application must be submitted to the Georgia Student Finance Commission. Once enrolled, student-specific award amounts will be applied to tuition. No additional tuition may be charged to students for dual enrollment approved courses. Students will not be charged mandatory fees or additional book fees for required books. However, they may be responsible for course-related fees. Students may participate in classes all year, including summer. Dual enrollment provides students with a chance to finish a post-secondary degree, certificate, or diploma while still in high school. It is an opportunity to gain college credits and gain exposure to classes within a variety of potential fields. For more information about the rules and regulations of dual enrollment, visit gafutures.org.
Okay, so that's just a basic little intro video that tells about dual enrollment. So what is dual enrollment? It is high school students are able to take college level classes while they're still a high school student. We have about 60 students right now who are doing this through Pope High School. Georgia does provide 100% of funding for tuition, books, and mandatory fees, which is an amazing deal, right? Free college. It's available to students between 9th and 12th grade, which is something that has just come into the works in the last couple of years. We definitely want to make sure that any students in the younger grades are doing this appropriately. So that's a conversation that we definitely would want to have with you and your child about doing dual enrollment, because it does take a certain amount of independence. The student needs to be able to advocate for themselves, realize they're going to be in classes potentially with adults, older students. So there's some implications there, but it is available through 9th through 12th. The majority of our kids are 11th and 12th graders who take dual enrollment classes. It is available, as they said in the video, in fall and spring. Our classes, you start them in the fall and you go through spring. We don't allow people to start in the spring. You can start in the fall, and then you can also take classes in the summer, which is great. Available at participating Georgia public private technical colleges on the, what color is it? The purple handout. These are just some of the schools. These are the majority of the schools that our students participate in dual enrollment through. Georgia Tech is also another one that a lot of students have been taking classes through recently. I did not put it on the back of this handout. That's a very specific kind of program, so that would be one you would definitely want to talk to your counselor about. And classes are either taken on location, which is kind of the traditional way of doing dual enrollment, but they have also started allowing students to take online classes, which opens up a world of opportunity for students as well. So to be eligible, first and foremost, the student has to be admitted into the college. There are certain requirements, as you can see on the handout, that students, the different colleges have different requirements for admission. And so that's an important thing to look at. Students must be on track to graduate from high school. If you've gotten off and things aren't going so well, dual enrollment might not be the right option, but talk to us, we'll help you figure that out. Students must maintain satisfactory academic progress. They have to be making sufficient grades to remain in the program. The colleges all set that bar at a different level. There's no residency requirement for dual enrollment, and funding is available for a maximum of 15 semester hours. Basically, 5 classes is roughly, give or take, how many classes a student can take a semester. So benefits. Students are eligible for their 4 years of high school, which is a huge benefit of students. So of course you're going to be saving lots of money with the way college rates are going up and up and up these days. This affords students the opportunity to get a large number of credits under their belt. Now, there's also some caveats there. You know, how much do you do? You know, what are the implications of taking so many classes? So those are kind of things to be thinking through. But in many cases, it's kind of a win-win situation, because it can give kids the chance to get double majors or an extra minor, or if they're wanting to go on to graduate school or medical school, they can get stuff done pretty early. Simultaneous credit for high school and college. A lot of our kids take credits at the college that also count for their graduation credits here. English 1101, for example, can be taken to meet their senior level English credit. They're not based on test scores. Of course, many students here at Pope do take AP classes, so dual enrollment classes are not based on AP scores. It's based on the grade that you get in the class. Whether or not the colleges will take the credits, we'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit, but that is definitely something to be thinking about if your student is not a great test taker, or you're not wanting everything to hinge on that one test. It can ease the transition from high school to college. There's been some research that shows students who do dual enrollment classes tend to do better in college because they've been able to transition and figure out how the college system works on kind of a gradual basis versus jumping in with both feet all of a sudden. And students can actually earn associate's degrees, technical diplomas, or technical certifications. And so that would be a conversation. Of course, we would need to start that early. And then it would also be a conversation with the college to make sure that the student is taking the appropriate classes to meet those requirements. But it's an amazing deal. I mentioned this, they can start pursuing career goals earlier. It gives them the opportunity to jump in there if they have some pretty lofty goals. Again, how fast do we want our kids to grow up? Okay, that's one thing to think about. You know, do we want to push them out the door too fast? So, you know, just something to think about. Greater access to a variety of courses. The dual enrollment course directory, if you haven't looked at that, I'll show you where that is in a little bit. There's a massive amount of courses that are available to students. Just about every course that a college offers would be available to students, with the exception of some of the more specified upper level courses that start getting heavy duty into the major. But I've had kids take tap dancing, I've had kids take astronomy and sign language and Russian and all kinds of really neat classes. The dual enrollment distance calculus kids who are taking like these crazy math classes that blow your mind. Flexibility in scheduling, for students who might have a job or maybe have some outside activities they're doing, dual enrollment classes, you can pick when you want the classes to be. You can schedule them all in the morning and have the afternoons free. Those of you who've been to college, you kind of know how that works. The students are creating the schedules themselves, and so flexibility in scheduling can be a good thing. Some students are truly ready to move on. We've got a lot of kids who are just over kind of the traditional high school setting, and they're ready to get out there and be in a more mature environment. A lot of our kids who go to do dual enrollment, they love that because they are treated more like an adult, at the college level. They're expecting these students to take things and do for themselves. They're not going to be holding their hands and coddling them at all. Well, you need to figure it out. That's kind of the attitude that the college has, that they'll help. But they do, a lot of kids like that. The EOCs are not required for most of the EOC classes that students take toward the latter years of high school, which that's a really cool one. So American Lit, US History, Economics, Physical Science, students do not have to take those EOCs. Now, there's an exception, SB2 students, and we currently don't have any students who are doing this particular program. I'm going to kind of shift to this topic real quick, and then I'll go back and talk some more. But the alternate graduation option, there is a way for students to graduate from high school using the dual enrollment program, and they can graduate by completing the 8 EOC courses plus health and personal fitness. And they do have to take the EOCs with those, and they complete an associate's degree, technical diploma, or 2 related technical certificates. And like I said, we don't have any students pursuing this right now, and you can actually pursue those without doing the SB2 option or the alternate graduation option. But if you're curious about this and want to know more, let your counselor know, and we can talk to you about that. Okay, so let's talk about the caveats, the exclusionary factors, things that might not be good, that might limit you from doing dual enrollment. So there may be some non-mandatory fees. These really are pretty nominal. I haven't had anybody come back and say, they're making me pay thousands of dollars. I mean, maybe a 20 bucks here. Parking fee. So some of those are not too bad, but there may be some. Sometimes students, if they choose a class like welding, for example, you might have to purchase your own helmet, or you might have to purchase some personal items that would end up becoming your own. Those you're going to have to pay for. Cosmetology, tools, things like that. Okay. The classes are going to be challenging. I have had kids come back saying how these professors are really difficult. They may only give the midterm and a final. They may not be, like I said, sometimes they're not as approachable as some of their teachers they may have here. So the classes can be pretty challenging. We usually tell the students, use the fantastic rateyourprofessor.com website. I don't know if you've heard of that. Some of you who have been in college kind of recently may know what that is, but it's a way to look up professor ratings and to see what people say about different professors. So that can be a good thing, caveat emptor, but that's something to think about. The colleges are going to communicate with the student. This is how they communicate. They're not going to be communicating with parents. They are under FERPA law, which requires them to communicate with students. So your student has to be, and students who are in this room, hopefully you're here too, you will be required to be the main point of contact and advocate for yourself. And that's a really important thing because with dual enrollment, we are expecting the students to take on a load of responsibility onto themselves. The requirement to do dual enrollment is not just for parents to see this presentation, but students have to see it as well and have to verify that they've seen this, okay? Because we want the students to be responsible for this information and know what they're getting into, okay? Because there's some great benefits, but there's also some caveats. If you fail a class, that's going on your college transcript, okay? And that follows you, okay? The credits that are awarded are not given weight on the POPE transcript. Okay, this is a biggie. unless the student has maxed out the credits that what we offer here at Pope. Like they've taken our AP Calculus BC class. Not everybody can take the Pope version of the multivariable calculus class, so our students who are going to Georgia Tech and taking the multivariable calculus class with that, they are going to be able to get the dual enrollment weight because it's above what we offer here at Pope. Okay. Some competitive colleges may not consider dual enrollment to be as rigorous as AP. Once you start getting into the super competitive colleges, a lot of times they do see AP classes as being more rigorous, more challenging. The AP classes are taught on a standard curriculum across the nation, and so they know what the student has learned. If a student is coming from some little college out in the middle of nowhere that they've never heard of, they don't know what the rigors of that particular class is as compared to maybe a more well-known college, and so there's a lot of unknowns there. Some colleges don't accept dual enrollment credits at all, so this is where you got to do your research. Okay, this is where it falls on the parent and the student to figure out if this is the right program for you and your college aspirations, that kind of thing. And like I said, college, the credit transferability is not guaranteed outside of the state of Georgia, private schools. Within Georgia, I will say there's a lot more acceptance because this program has been developed with, you saw the USG, the Technical College System of Georgia, and the private schools. They've all kind of gotten together, and there's a lot greater transferability in the state of Georgia. Doesn't mean that all the schools in the state of Georgia see dual enrollment as competitive as AP, I will say that, just like I said for other schools as well. But just be aware of that. Okay. Okay, some more practical things here at Pope. Kids who are doing dual enrollment, they're not here every day. They're not here on campus. They miss things. It can kind of be a little tricky for them to hear the announcements and know what's going on. That sometimes is not a problem, but sometimes it can be. During senior year, there's things that are going on. There are fun activities that happen. If they're doing dual enrollment, then they're not able to do all those things. If they are off campus during AO in the morning, they're going to be missing those announcements. They can always go back and watch the videos, though, that our video production class does on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that's a good way. But we tell the students that you need to be talking to your AO teachers, you need to be asking your friends, getting on Hound Highlights, reading those announcements to keep up with those things. It also could impact just relationships. So students, I mean, if you're not here every day interacting with your friends, you're not aware of all the little ins and outs and things that are happening during the day. And for some of you that might be a minor thing, it may not be a big deal, but other kids I've had them come back and say, you know, I kind of miss just the day-to-day interaction with my friends. The calendars, this is a biggie. The fall break, the winter break in February, spring break, a lot of times these do not align with the breaks that they have at the colleges. So if you know that you're going to be taking trips during those times, or if you're thinking ahead and needing to plan, just realize that these dates are not often, they don't always match up. Sometimes spring break does, it just depends on the school, but that's something to think about. If your student has a special student service, an IEP 504, that kind of thing, they can serve students under those plans at the college, but you need to be communicating with the college about that. We don't send that information to the college and then they just pick it up and carry it on. It's up to the student to advocate for themselves. And I did say the student needs to go to them and say, I have special needs, I need this accommodated. They're going to tell you what information they need, and then you're going to need to provide them with that information. You can take the current plan that is on file, but they will probably require you to bring some other additional information. But please communicate with your case manager about this. Make your counselor aware, hey, I have an IEP, I have a 504 if we're not already aware, so that we can talk to you about what that might look like. Okay, parking. Parking is not guaranteed for dual enrollment students, okay? And it's not prioritized for dual enrollment students. This can be a big exclusionary factor. I've had several situations already this year where students didn't get their parking space they were hoping to get. Maybe they were juniors and were in the lottery, they didn't get it. And it has created issues for them because you don't automatically get it. And if they don't have another way to get off campus to get to their college class, then, I mean, we can't give you a spot where there is no spot. Okay, so you have to have a backup plan. If you are a 9th, 10th, 11th grader, you need to have another plan in place that is your primary plan. And if you're an 11th grader and you get a space in the lottery, then great. That's amazing. You get the spot and you're good to go. But if not, you need to have a backup plan. Also, tardies, absences, discipline, things like that can cause you to lose your parking spot. So if you do get a spot, you have to make sure that your attendance, if you are taking classes here at Pope and the college and having to drive back and forth, you need to make sure that the schedule is set just right so you're not missing class either, because that could cause you to lose parking. Speaking of that, you must be off campus during your dual enrollment classes. You can't be on our campus. It's a liability for students to be on campus if they're not assigned to a teacher. And that comes down from way high above. So we can't let students sit in the media center or the computer labs. I'm just, they'll say, can't we just sit in the lab? And no, we're not allowed to do that. Those labs in the media center, they're used very frequently, so that's not an option. So if this is not something you're going to be able to work with, then you might need to reconsider dual enrollment, unless you can figure some way with the parking to work that out. And with that being said, you have to factor in the travel time. Our changing bell schedules, we have these early release days that come about that are earlier than our X block days, and sometimes we switch X block to Fridays, right? And so sometimes that creates a situation where the schedule might be off for the student. So these are things to consider as well. Okay, so students who are eligible, you may be looking on that sheet saying, okay, well, my student meets all these academic requirements to get into dual enrollment, but we really want to make sure that they're ready for dual enrollment. Disorganized versus organized. We need students who are proactive, flexible, can handle a little bit of stress and not just either give up or freak out or whatever. We need, okay, let's talk it through, let's figure out a solution. Assertive, you've got to be willing to talk to those professors if something happens and you're not sure how to deal with it. You got to be willing to talk to them. Being a good self-advocate, staying on top of things. I've had students sometimes who will not do well on a test and they just kind of sit around and sort of, wait for things to get better, and then I talk to them a little bit later and they're like, yeah, my grade's been real low, and I'll say, have you talked to the professor? And they'll say, well, no, and I'm like, you need to go talk to that professor, like ASAP, email or something. So you got to stay on top of it. If the student is very dependent on parents, if you guys are doing all this for your student, we want the students to take charge of this process. We want them to do the application. We want them to submit their test scores. We want them to do all these things. And when we start talking to dual enrollment, I always address my stuff to the student, because the student is the one who is going to be taking these classes. They are going to be the college level student. In college, you don't go to college with your student, right? They're going to college. So we want the kids to do this. They need to be checking email. Every time I do a presentation or whenever we do lessons with the students, we always have them go and log into whatever account we're using, and we get them to put in their email address. And I usually will say, hey, who of you checked your email? And like 4 will raise their hand. And we say to them, the older you get, the more you're going to need to be using email and checking email. Some of the kids use it, but everything's text messages these days. But we do want them to be checking their email and responding. Reading them, not just checking emails, but reading them, okay? They have to remain academically eligible, satisfactory academic process, and then they also have to be enrolled full-time, which that'll be a conversation we'll have when we meet to talk about classes. Full-time students, if a student is wanting to be full-time dual enrollment, they'll take between 12 to 15 hours, which is 4 to 5 classes. Part-time, we have got all kinds of varieties of part-time. We've got some kids who are taking 1 class here and everything else dual enrollment. We've got some kids who are taking everything here and 1 class dual enrollment and anything in between. So we would talk about what constitutes that. So this is just an example of what a possible schedule could look like. If a student takes a 1 to 2 semester hour class, sometimes fine art classes might be just a 1 hour class. It'll be a half credit. It'll transfer back here at Pope as a half credit. If they're taking a 3 to 5 credit class, it'll be a 1 hour credit back here at Pope. So for example, if they're taking these college classes over here on the left, I know what these classes are, and so I know that they would transfer back to Pope in those categories. So the student would actually earn 4 units of credit in 1 semester. So typically a student here at Pope would only earn 3 units of credit for a semester, so they can get some extra credits that way. They must successfully complete the college credits. We do put these classes onto the high school transcript. So colleges usually, and this is something that's interesting that some students have been surprised at, colleges require that a student earn a C or better for them to move on to the next class. A D, we can still take that class for credit here at Pope, and so I've had some kids who've come back and said, I think I failed the class, I'm not going to get credit, and it's a D, and I say, yes, you will get the credit, and so D's not great, but they'll still get the credit. But we record all the grades, whether they're failed, whether they're passed, we have to put the grades on the transcript. So the student gives us permission to get those, the college will send those to us, and then we transfer them using this grading scale down here. Colleges don't send us the number grade, they send us the letter grade. So we just give a standard grade that the county requires us to give. So an A is a 95, a B is an 85, and so forth. So dropping classes. So if you guys who have been in college before remember, in college you can add classes, you can drop classes, you can withdraw from classes if it's not going well, all the way up to like October or March. In dual enrollment, you don't want to drop classes, okay? After the first 10 days of the Pope semester, there's a cutoff, and if anything changes, you get a grade of a 10 for that class. We have to put it onto your transcript, and you get a grade of a 10, which is not a good thing. Up until that point, you can make adjustments. We want to try to get all those adjustments made well before then, though. We'll talk a little bit more about picking classes and choosing classes in a minute, but if we're making changes at that late a date, that's not good. Because it's hard to get college classes at that point, particularly if you're looking for really popular classes like English 1101 or psychology. So sometimes the students will get emails from the colleges. They get college emails that they send to everybody, and they'll advertise, hey, October the 30th is the last day to withdraw from a class, and the kid may be thinking, oh, okay, well, I'll do that because I'm not doing good in this class, I'm going to withdraw. No, we don't want to do that, okay? You have to go through your counselor anytime you want to make any type of a change. We are trying to make sure that you graduate high school, okay? That's our job. I have had situations where students just stopped going to a graduation requirement and the college dropped them. They failed the class, they didn't graduate. That happens sometimes. So anything that needs to be adjusted, you have to go through your counselor. We'll help you with that if it's possible, okay? So the GPA will be impacted if it posts to the transcript. If you drop below full-time status, we have to enroll you back into a class at Pope, and then it could definitely get you off track for graduation. So hybrid schedule, let's talk about students who take, I call these hybrids, students who take classes at Pope and the college who have to go back and forth. This is a thing to really think about. You'll talk about that when you meet with a counselor. So things you need to be thinking about, whether you want the classes in the morning versus afternoon. Are you involved in some type of extracurricular activity that requires you to be on campus in the morning or in the afternoon? You're going to want to schedule around that. You're going to want to think about the different bell schedules that we have and make sure that you plan in travel time from the time the class is over, coming out of the classroom, walking to your car, getting in a car, factoring in traffic, driving to Pope, parking in your spot. Oh, what if somebody's in your spot? Now I gotta go find a different spot. We want you to think about all the worst case scenarios to make sure that you're factoring in times and bell schedules and things like that. I talked about extracurriculars, announcements, I talked about that earlier, the parking situation, you gotta think about that. Specific electives like AP French, or maybe you're in a specific band class, or Classes that there's only one of them, okay? We have a bunch of those. Some might be in the middle of the day. That might make it challenging traveling back and forth. Sometimes you may not know that until after we've set the schedule in May, late April, May, and so it sometimes can create a situation where we have to go to the drawing board and try to rearrange things. So we don't build the schedule around your preferences. We build the schedule how we need to build the schedule here at Pope. And sometimes when you're picking your classes, you're kind of doing it blindly. And we will work with you to try to rearrange them, but that's part of that flexibility, okay? That's part of that flexibility. We have to make sure that, you know, we get you what you need to graduate again. That's the bottom line. And every class isn't offered every period. I think some students are surprised to, oh, well, can't you just put that class 7th period? And we're like, well, no, it's not offered that period. Or it might be full. You know, we may have already put students into a particular period and there's no room to move things around. Absences and tardies are not excused. I spoke to Ms. Arbnitsky today. She came in my office. She said, what do you tell dual enrollment people about attendance? I said, I tell them that it's not excused. She said, good, because it's not. And so you have to factor in those pieces with dual enrollment, because sometimes there are unavoidable things, but they don't excuse those. Now, we would say if you have to miss something here at Pope because of a dual enrollment situation, to bring in a note, and that will at least file it a way that the parent gave permission for you to miss that particular day. For example, sometimes exams, final exams, colleges schedule them at a totally different time than the class actually is offered, because they want more time. They want the student to be able to take more time to take the test. And so in those cases, you would just send a note in and say, okay, this is why I missed. But just know that absences aren't excused. Schedule conflicts may conflict, so again, flexibility. We want you to be flexible. It gets hard to figure out things when it has to be this way and there's just no way to work it. You know, we try to do the best we can, but you know, we can only do what we can do. Okay. Students can participate in extracurricular activities. That's a common question. They do still get to participate in the activities, the sports and clubs and things that they are part of. But it's the student's responsibility to make sure that they are thinking about when rehearsals are, when practices are. What if I make state playoff and I've got to miss my dual enrollment class? Professors usually are not too understanding about those things. They don't really care sometimes. Sometimes they do. But a lot of times they're like, okay, so you missed my test. Well, sorry. You know, so that's some important thing to think about. They're not required to give makeups. And sometimes conflicts occur between the sports and things, so that would be something to think about. Students can take foreign language classes. Some students want to go beyond what they've already done here, which is great. They'll take a placement test at the college and they will go into whatever class they place into, or they could start a brand new language, start with 1101. Like I said, if you look at the Kennesaw State course directory, it's gigantic. I mean, any foreign language you could possibly think of is available. Health is available at some of the colleges, not all of them. Personal fitness is available at some of the colleges, not all of them, but the state came down recently and said that only full-time dual enrollment students can take PE classes. It's a little bit of a strange thing. But that's what they have said, that's what we have to abide by. So only full-time students can take PE classes, which would include personal fitness. And then, of course, career tech fine arts classes can be taken, whether they're transferable or not is something to research, but we always have a lot of kids who are interested in those types of classes. So to find the list, I've referenced this several times, and it's also in that little video that you saw at the beginning. The GA Futures website, you can go there and click on dual enrollment or search for it, and then the course directory is there, and I'll show you a little screenshot. So up there, you can type in dual enrollment at the top, or, okay, I put things in there. Or you can look for this little splash screen there and click on the Learn More. Either one of those will bring up the dual enrollment page, and then this is what it looks like. There's the video I showed you, and then the course directory is there. So when you click on that, you can search for the specific college that you're looking for, and then you can see all the many classes that are available. It can be a little overwhelming. I usually say use the Control F, the search function, to find courses that you might be curious about. Okay, Hope. Let's talk about Hope Scholarship. This is a common question. So the classes are calculated into the Hope GPA. If they're core classes, English, Math, Science, Social Studies, Foreign Language classes that are at the degree level. If you're taking classes at Chattanooga Tech, if you're taking classes that are not considered degree level classes, they would not be included into the Hope GPA. But that when we transfer them onto the Hope GPA, not Hope, the grades are calculated just like any other grade. And they do count for the rigor requirement. You've heard of this probably. Students have to have 4 classes that are considered rigorous, so dual enrollment classes do count for that. There are a lot of classes here at Pope that count for the rigor requirement, by the way, like Algebra 2, the second year of a foreign language, physics, chemistry. It doesn't have to be honors, it doesn't have to be AP, it doesn't have to be dual enrollment. But just to ease your mind if that has worried you, that's a very common question we get. SB2 students, however, may not meet those requirements. If they're taking the certificates or diploma classes, they may not meet the rigor requirements. Good thing is that dual enrollment credits don't count against the Hope cap limits. So when you go to college, guess what? You still have all your Hope available, okay? So they don't count as attempted hours, and your GPA starts all over again at the college with a fresh GPA, even though you have these credits. And one thing that I'm realizing I did not put on this screen is that dual enrollment credits do get a 0.5 extra quality point toward the GPA for Hope. For Pope, you don't get it unless you've maxed out what we offer here at Pope as far as the highest level credit. Hope does give a 0.5, so I apologize. I thought I had put that on another screen, so that's not on there. But you do get a 0.5, and it goes just like you would if you were doing an AP class. And it goes up to a 4.0. A's, for some reason the state decided they don't want to give A's that extra 0.5, but B's, C's, D's, and even F's, strangely enough, get a 0.5. Okay? And that's the core classes. Okay, so classes, the colleges, again, that handout that I passed out that you picked up on the way in, these are the colleges that the typical students here at Pope will participate in. I would say Chattanooga Tech is probably the most attended college, and then KSU. Georgia Highlands, I've been trying to tell more people at Georgia Highlands. We have a mom here who has had kids go participate in Georgia Highlands. So if you have any questions, she can talk to you about that. But Georgia Highlands is actually a satellite campus on the KSU Marietta campus, so it's a 2-year college, but they have some cool offerings. Georgia State, there's a few kids who do Georgia State, either, that Georgia Perimeter and Georgia State merged, so there's Georgia State Atlanta, which is the big Georgia State, and then there's Georgia State Perimeter, which is the 2-year campuses. And of course, Georgia Tech, I would definitely encourage you to look at the Georgia Tech website for that information. I didn't have room on my sheet to put them on there, and theirs is so specific, I didn't want to just try to summarize all that in one little place. Okay, let's talk deadlines, okay? Deadlines are going to be posted by the college, and they set different deadlines than what we would prefer. If you look on the sheet, I was trying to think, how can I make it clear that I want you to follow our deadlines? And so I was like, well, I'm just going to leave them there, but I'm going to draw a line through them, okay? So what we want you guys to do is to be following deadlines. We want students to have completed the application process and meet with their counselor at least a month prior to the college deadline, but no later than March 1st. So nobody should be doing anything after March 1st, whichever date is earlier. So I've given some examples. So Georgia Highlands summer deadline. You want to go to Highlands in the summer. What they say is March 1st. We want you to get it done by February 1st. Georgia State's is May 1st for the fall. We want you to get it done by March 1st because that's the latest, because a month would be April, and that's past our March 1st deadline. KSU's priority deadline, this is the earliest one that exists, is December 19th. Their priority deadline, those students get first priority over choosing classes before anybody else in the entire school. So if you're looking at KSU, you want to meet this deadline. They have a later deadline in March, but you get to choose classes after registration is open. I'll answer questions at the end, if you don't mind. So the reason we set these deadlines so early is because we want the students to be able to get the classes that they need. If you wait until May to apply to some of these colleges, their registrations have been open for months, potentially, and classes start filling up. If you're wanting to take classes at the KSU Mountain View campus, those English 1101 classes get filled up lickety-split, because we've got not just students who are taking classes in general with Chat Tech who are wanting to take those classes. We've got Lassiter, we've got Walton, we've got Sprayberry, we've got Kell, we've got, all these other schools that have students who are also doing dual enrollment. So we want our students to have done everything they need to do to get admitted and to get enrolled into their classes quickly, okay? I'm selfish like that. I want our students to have the best of everything, okay? So, and the other thing is that most colleges are going to require that you attend orientation. Sometimes those orientations fill up quickly, which means you can't register for classes. So a lot of times they want you to do orientation before you can register for classes. So the earlier you get accepted, the earlier you can do orientation, and the earlier you can register for classes. We actually, you see this big red star over here on the left, you are encouraged to complete the process earlier than the POPE priority deadline. The earlier the better, okay? And what we say, complete the entire application process and counselor advisement session. So look at the green sheet real quick. So if you look down at the very bottom, you'll see a big line across the bottom. And what we want you to do is complete all the steps above that line before whatever the priority deadline is for that particular college. And if you have questions about that, definitely let's talk about it at the end. I'm not taking questions right now because we're recording. If any of you saw this video camera, we're going to post this on the website too for students and parents who weren't able to come. So we'll do questions at the end. I should have said that at the beginning. Okay, so steps, we'll just kind of go through the steps real quick on that green sheet. So the first step is to come to this presentation, which all of you have met this requirement. At the end, there'll be a survey that I'm going to ask you all to take. That's to log your attendance at this meeting. So when you contact your counselor to say, hey, I'd like to do dual enrollment, I've done all these steps, can we meet? They're going to look and say, okay, did you go to the meeting? Have you signed in? So make sure that before you're done, before you leave here, you do the little survey that you'll see at the end. Research the colleges. Do a lot of research ahead of time. Figure out which school is the right one, what program's right, what classes you might want to do, whether or not the college you want to go to in the end is going to take the credits, all of that. Take the SAT and ACT. This is probably one of the first things you need to be thinking about doing because there aren't a lot of dates between now and when some of these college deadlines are. This is why I have this meeting so early in the school year, is because if you're wanting to apply to KSU for that priority deadline, you're going to want to get your stuff in pretty early, okay? So go ahead and take the SAT or ACT in the fall. If you're looking at Chat Tech, you can take a test called the AccuPlacer, which is available through Chat Tech. You have to just go to their website and they have information on how to take that test. Again, fall, early winter is recommended. You can go and usually take that test just by calling them and scheduling a time. If you have taken AP tests before, students, and you have scores, you should go ahead and send those scores to the college so that they're waiting for you so that you can apply those credits toward any of those intro classes you're wanting to exempt out of. So go ahead and do that now. And if you're going to be taking any AP classes at the end of this year, when you're bubbling and doing all that document preparation for the AP exams, make sure you go ahead and list those colleges at that time as well so those scores go immediately. You don't want them to come back in July and then send them because there'll be a delay. And then submit the dual enrollment application to the college. Every once in a while we'll have somebody that comes along and they have not submitted the application, but they've told us, hey, I want to do dual enrollment, and they think that's what they that's all they need to do, and then they're confused in the fall when they come back and say, why am I not in dual enrollment? And we're like, well, did you do all the things you were supposed to do? And they didn't. We know this, but so don't forget, submit the dual enrollment application to the college. Official transcripts, colleges do need to see what the students' grades are. They will calculate their own GPA for admission. And so students, this is a student responsibility. They would need to come into the counseling office and request that we send an official transcript to the college. They're $2 to send official transcripts. There's a card they will fill out. And Chat Tech does not require transcripts. They don't require a minimum GPA for admission. So they don't need that transcript. Okay, so after you've done those steps, then you're going to email your counselor to say, hey, I've done all these steps, I'm ready for a meeting. I'm ready to meet with you for us to talk about the remaining paperwork. You saw in the video, there's the student participation agreement, and then we're going to talk to you about the funding application as well. That's something that we're actually going to give you the instructions and tell you to do that on your own. But there's some other paperwork that we will do. We will ask you to prepare all of that and bring it to the meeting with you so that we can go through all of that. The more we can do ahead of time, the more time we have to talk about the good stuff, about the classes and about how we want to organize stuff. We don't want to spend all our time, oh, you haven't done that part? Okay, well, let's go get this form and let's fill it out. You know, we don't want to spend our time doing all of that. We want to spend our time productively doing the hardcore conversations about classes. And we do reserve the right to reschedule if all the steps have not been completed. Again, we want to make sure that we use our time in the best way possible to make sure that we're getting everything done. Feel free to email us, feel free to ask us questions if you're confused about something, but we do want to make sure that when we actually sit down to meet and do our advising session that we've covered everything. Everything's completed ahead of time. And then, of course, the funding application, you have to do it every semester. The participation agreement, that document that we fill out in the counseling meeting, you have to send that to the college. The college has to have that on file to know what we have given approval for the student to take. So all of those steps have to be done by the POPE priority deadline. After that, the student will get an email from the college. If they are accepted, they will get notification. And then there should be instructions in that email about scheduling an advising orientation session at the college. Do that quickly. As soon as that email comes in, get on that right away. Get in on the first orientation you possibly can. Because like I said, you have to do that at almost all the colleges before they will let you register for classes. And then when the registration frame opens, you're ready. And so if you go onto the college websites, a lot of times they have those dates posted so you can have those in your calendar and be ready to go. Some of the colleges like KSU are a whole lot more hands-on, and they bring you in, they sit down, they do their own individual meeting with you. So some of the schools are a little bit more specific about how that process works. So fall registration can begin as early as February, March, April. For the following school year. So again, this is why we start early. Spring, so we've already started getting some emails from students right now that are getting ready to do their paperwork for classes for the spring. And then summer registration usually begins March, sometimes February, depending on the college. So again, the later you wait, the harder it is to get classes. Colleges are also going to require you to send additional paperwork like proof of immunization. Some of them are going to require verification of lawful presence. You can read all about that on their website. And then once you've done all those things and you've got your schedule, we have to have a copy of that schedule. And it has to go to your counselor. So I would be expecting these mid to late April, but definitely before the last day of school, because we want to get all the kids' schedules so that we can try to make sure their POPE schedule aligns with their college schedule. If there's any problem, we can start tweaking and get that done before school starts in the fall. That's our goal, okay? So the earlier the better. So a little bit more about the advising session. What we're going to talk about in that session, we're going to talk about graduation, how the student is going to meet their graduation requirements. We want to make sure that nothing is left out there. And so the counselor's job, our job is to make sure you graduate from high school. Now, we can talk about some of this other stuff, but we can't be responsible for knowing what the University of Nebraska requires for their biology major, you know, to graduate with that. We don't know that, okay? That's where you get to do your research, and you have to know if these credits transfer. We can kind of show you how to do that, to figure that out. I'm happy to kind of show you where you can go to look up transfer credits, but you might want to go ahead and start doing that before. You also want to know about how the college might look at rigor of dual enrollment versus AP. We're going to complete that student participation agreement. Cobb County also requires something called the Cobb County Local School Agreement. This basically goes through all the rules, regulations of Cobb County. I've talked about them all today, but they make you sign off on all of those things. The GA Futures application for funding. We do require parents and students to sign up for a Remind texting account, which is great for us when we need to quickly get in touch with a student or a parent about a question we may have. Maybe there's a deadline coming up. So every once in a while, I'll send a quick text to a student through the Remind app. So we'll get you signed up for that. And then sometimes colleges require additional paperwork, a consent form. I think Highlands still does a consent form. It's just an additional form that they require. So it would be up to you to bring that with you. We'll fill that out at that advisement session. So a few tips, let me just touch on a couple of things. I've mentioned some of these already. So if you're interested in KSU, just FYI, when you go to their website, they want you to fill out a form saying, hey, I'm interested in dual enrollment. You fill the form out, and then you hit submit, and they're going to send you a code that you put into the applications that waives the fee. So you don't have to pay the $20 or $30 fee, whatever it is. Other colleges, just look for their dual enrollment application. Don't submit the general application. Usually they have a separate application, or when you go into the application, you click on the little button that says dual enrollment or something like that. Don't forget to submit the participation agreement to the college after we do our advising session, and we give you that participation agreement back. We're going to say, okay, send this to the college. Don't forget that, because your application won't be complete until they get that form. There's different ways colleges will accept that. I talked about AP scores. Go ahead and do those. Orientation. College orientation, this is not just, you have to go, but it's important because they talk about not just registering for classes, but this is where you're going to find out how to get books, how to get parking, how to get a student ID, what the attendance policies might be for the particular college. Chat Tech, for example, if you don't come on the first day of class, they may drop you. So that's an important thing to know. If you don't know that and miss class, you're dropped, and that's not good. Okay? Little things like that.